I heard the door creak before I saw the shadow. Quiet. Deliberate. The soft brush of socked feet across carpet. My breathing stayed even shallow, though my heart pounded like a warning bell. I had left the nightstand drawer slightly ajar just enough. The bait was in place. Cassie hovered for a moment at the edge of the bed. Then she moved. I could hear the slight rattle as she opened the drawer. A pause. Then snap. Her scream tore through the silence, raw and shrill. I sat up slowly, clicked on the lamp. Light washed over her contorted face. She was clutching her hand, the mousetrap dangling from her fingers like a metal accusation. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she shrieked. I looked her dead in the eye. "What were you hoping to find, Cassie?" Before she could answer, Marius appeared in the doorway, bleary-eyed and alarmed. "What's going on?" "Your mother booby-trapped her drawer," Cassie cried, waving her injured hand. "She's losing it, Marius. Look what she did to me." Marius looked at me then at the drawer. Confused. Caught. I folded my hands in my lap. She was in my room at 2 a.m, opening my drawer. "Does that sound like concern to you?" I thought I heard something. Cassie sputtered. "I was checking on you without turning on the light," I said evenly, and heading straight for the drawer. Marius ran a hand through his hair. "Cass, why were you even in here?" She glared at me. "Because she's paranoid. She thinks everyone's stealing from her." I was trying to help. I leaned forward. "Let's be honest. You were looking for something, and I knew you would. That's why the trap was there." Cassie looked at me like I'd slapped her. Marius just stood there, the silence growing heavier between us. "I think I said quietly, it's time I show you both what else I've been keeping in that drawer." 6 months earlier, I arrived with a canvas tote, a pharmacy bag, and 2 trembling hands. The minor stroke hadn't left any permanent damage, but it scared me enough to say yes when Marius offered me the guest room. Cassie had stood beside him beaming. "Of course, stay as long as you need. We're family." I offered $900 toward the mortgage, refused at first, then accepted after talks. I insisted on pulling my weight, making lunches, folding laundry, walking the kids to the bus stop, even prepping dinners. Cassie always smiled. Always thanked me, at first. By the 2nd month, something shifted. I couldn't place it exactly. Cassie began to redo the towels I folded. "You always do them like it's a hospital," she'd say with a chuckle, but her eyes never matched the tone. When I made roast chicken one Sunday, she scraped the skin off with her fork and whispered to Marius, "Too salty again." I wasn't supposed to hear, but I did. They stopped inviting me to the patio on warm evenings. I'd hear laughter from the kitchen window while I dried dishes alone. Cassie started locking the office door during the day, said it was messy and confidential. Then came the odd things. My good wool scarf vanished. A bottle of prescription eye drops felt too light. My favorite mug, the one with the blue lilacs, reappeared with a crack and no explanation. I told myself not to overthink it. I'd lived alone a long time. Maybe I wasn't adjusting well. Maybe it was me. But the tension in Cassie's voice when she said Nora, the way she no longer hugged me when I handed over the kids' school forms, it added up. I'd catch her watching me sometimes when she thought I wasn't looking. Eyes calculating. Cold. That's when I stopped leaving anything important in my purse and started locking my bedroom door when I went to the bathroom. I didn't say a word to Marius, not yet. I still believed foolishly that kindness might be enough, but I was already beginning to take notes. Quietly, carefully, the first entry read March 12th missing bracelet top drawer. The bracelet was the first. Silver delicate passed down from my mother. I hadn't worn it in months, but I knew exactly where it should have been inside the velvet pouch in my top dresser drawer. One morning I opened the pouch and it was empty. I searched everywhere, every coat pocket, every suitcase, every old purse. Cassie shrugged when I mentioned it. "You probably took it off somewhere strange. You've been tired lately." The next week I noticed my arthritis pills tasted different, slightly chalky. A few days later, I woke up in the middle of the night, sweating, heart racing. I double-checked the bottle. The pharmacy label was mine, but something was off. When I told Cassie, she laughed. "Maybe you mixed bottles. Are you sure you didn't take 2 by mistake?" I nodded, said I must have. But that afternoon, I pulled out the pill log I used when I lived alone. I started tracking again, doses, dates, any side effects. Then the wallet. I'd taken out $80 cash for groceries. I used $27. The rest should have been folded behind my ID. When I went to pay for stamps the next day, only a single $10 bill remained. Maybe you left it in your coat, Cassie suggested, or gave the wrong bill at the store. I stopped mentioning things after that. Instead, I started keeping a spiral notebook hidden behind the linen towels. I wrote down every incident. Dates, items, what was said. At first, it felt silly, paranoid even, but page by page, it became harder to deny. Cassie wasn't sloppy. She was subtle. Never enough to make a scene, just enough to chip away. Marius was no help. He was always distracted, his job, the kids, the bills. When I did manage to get his attention, he smiled and kissed my forehead. "You've got a lot on your plate, Mom. Don't let it get to you." I smiled back. But inside, something had already shifted. I no longer trusted the quiet or the smiles. So I locked my valuables, counted my pills, and when I picked up the scratch-off ticket at the gas station, I didn't tell a soul. It was a Tuesday. I stopped at the corner store for milk and toothpaste and grabbed a scratch-off ticket on impulse, the way you toss a wish into a well, even when you know better. I scratched it in the car engine, off the heater, ticking softly. $4,800. I stared at the numbers until my eyes blurred. It wasn't life-changing money, not exactly, but it was enough to matter, enough to breathe, enough to imagine something that belonged to me again. I didn't tell anyone. Not Marius, not the kids, and certainly not Cassie. But the next morning, I stepped into the hallway while calling the lottery office to schedule a pickup. I thought the house was empty. I was wrong. Cassie's voice drifted from the kitchen moments later, just loud enough. "Oh, did you need me to pick up milk?" You know, since someone forgot yesterday, I knew she'd heard. That night, after dinner, I waited until the house had gone quiet. I slipped into my room and opened the drawer of my nightstand. Inside, I placed an unsealed envelope, blank, except for a yellow sticky note that read, "Claim form, do not lose." Next to it, I nestled the mousetrap. Standard snap model. I'd bought it last fall for a pantry mouse we never caught. I tested it once, still strong, set it delicately, then laid my wallet in plain view. A second envelope was tucked deeper in the drawer, filled with old receipts to add weight. The real ticket. That went in the one place I knew Cassie would never look. Folded into thirds and slipped beneath the insert of my bra against my skin, warm and safe. I lay in bed afterward, heart still breathing calm. This wasn't about revenge, it was about proof, about clarity. I had spent months letting her twist my memory, doubt myself, question the ordinary. But this I would know. And if she took the bait, I'd be ready. When the clock blinked 2:17 a.m. and I heard the door creak open, I didn't move. I waited. The sound was unmistakable, that sharp crack of the trap, followed by a piercing scream that split the quiet like a razor. I sat up slowly, turned on the bedside lamp, and let the light fall over Cassie, hunched and clutching her hand like a wounded animal. She stared at me, eyes wide and wild. The mousetrap dangled from her fingers. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she gasped, her voice ragged. I didn't flinch. "What were you doing in my drawer, Cassie?" She hesitated. I heard something. I thought maybe you fell or needed help. I was checking on you." At 2 a.m, I asked evenly, without turning on the light, and heading straight for my drawer. The hallway light flicked on. Marius appeared, rubbing his eyes. "What's going on?" Cassie turned to him, cradling her hand dramatically. "Your mom set a trap in her drawer. Look what she did to me." Marius blinked at the trap still hanging from her fingers, then at me. "Mom." "She was in my room," I said, going through my things. The trap wasn't hidden. I placed it in plain sight. Cassie scoffed. "She's paranoid, Marius. She's been acting off for weeks." I was trying to make sure she was okay. Marius looked from one of us to the other, caught between confusion and disbelief. "Why were you going through her nightstand?" "She's not well. She's been accusing me of things, misplacing stuff," and Cassie stopped clutching her injured hand again. "You always take her side." He didn't answer, not right away. And in the silence, I saw something in his eyes, hesitation. doubt. I drew a slow breath. There's something else I need you both to see. Cassie took a step back. What now? I reached for the folder I'd tucked under the mattress earlier that night, slid it onto my lap, and held it there, firm and quiet. Evidence, I said. So there's no more guessing about what's been happening in this house. I opened the folder slowly, careful not to let my hands tremble. I pulled out the photos, first 6 of them, printed in matte color. Cassie, arms around a man who wasn't my son, outside a restaurant 2 towns over. One of them showed her kissing him, broad daylight, no shame. Cassie's mouth parted, but no words came. I didn't hire a private investigator, I said, laying the photos flat on the comforter. I just happened to shop at the same grocery store as your boyfriend's mother. She thought I was you. Marius took a step forward, staring at the pictures as if they might rearrange themselves into something more innocent. They didn't. I slid out the next item, a printed transcript. These are recordings, I said, from the audio recorder I hid in the coat closet. Just clips. You talking on the phone about finally getting rid of the old woman? You asking someone what to do if I just didn't wake up one day? Should I go on? Cassie's face drained of color. You invaded my privacy, she managed to choke out. You invaded my room, repeatedly. I handed over one last item, a notarized copy of a revised will from Marius, signed 2 years ago, with a clause she had altered. I circled the amendment. This document was changed without his knowledge. His original copy doesn't match, I checked. Marius finally spoke. Is this true? His voice cracked, not angry, just small. Cassie glared at me like a cornered animal. She's manipulating you. No, I said quietly. This time I came prepared. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. The evidence sat between us as loud as thunder. Cassie reached for Marius's arm, but he stepped back. For the first time in months, the room felt still. Clear. I stood pressing the folder to my chest. You wanted to search through my drawer, Cassie. Now you've seen what's inside. And when she said nothing at all, I knew it had landed. It wasn't over, but the silence meant the truth had cracked something open. She's manipulating you, Cassie shrieked, pointing at me like I was the one who'd been sneaking through drawers in the dark. She's twisted everything, Marius. Can't you see that I didn't flinch? I reached into the folder one more time and pulled out the receipt. Clean, simple, dated. Retainer paid in full to Leona Hatch, attorney at law. The name made Cassie blanch. Her cousin. I spoke to Leona last week, I said calmly. Asked her if she had any conflicts of interest. She told me, family or not, she won't stand behind theft. Cassie opened her mouth, closed it again. I've been paying your mortgage. I continued feeding your children, folding your laundry. I've bought the groceries, cleaned to the floors, and watched your kids so you could sleep in and scroll your phone. I've given more than I've taken, and you've treated me like a burden. Marius was silent, pale. Cassie's hands curled into fists. This is your plan, isn't it? You've been waiting for a reason to drive a wedge between us. No, I said, not raising my voice. I've been waiting for the moment I stopped betraying myself to keep the peace. I handed her the final document, a cease and desist letter. Clear language, accusation of property tampering, threat of civil action. She scanned the first few lines and laughed bitterly. You really think you'll win? I'm not trying to win, I said. I'm drawing a line. Marius looked at the letter, then at me. You talked to a lawyer? I nodded. After the prescription mix-ups, after the money, after the first bracelet disappeared. I gave you both time to correct it, but I'm done waiting for people to do right by me just because they should. Cassie stared at me, the fury behind her eyes flickering into something else, fear. She didn't speak again as I walked past her, didn't protest when I gathered my things from the hallway and packed a small overnight bag. Marius followed me to the top of the stairs but said nothing. I didn't ask him to choose. I just walked out quietly, certain that I had finally fully arrived at the edge of my own life. The apartment wasn't much, just a 1-bedroom above a sewing supply store. But the lease was in my name. The windows opened without a fight, and I could leave the door unlocked without flinching. For the first time in months, I didn't wake to footsteps outside my room. I used a third of the lottery winnings for the deposit and basic furnishings. The rest I set aside for something I hadn't dared imagine in years, a shop. small, manageable mine. A flower stall with room for seedlings and sunshine. I found the space tucked between a shuttered bakery and a nail salon with a crooked for lease sign in the dusty window. I saw possibility, not dust. I hadn't heard from Marius in over a week when he showed up at the shop while I was scrubbing the front counter. He didn't knock, just stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, eyes down. "This is nice," he said. "It will be," I replied, rinsing the sponge. He nodded. "Cassie says you're trying to destroy our family." I looked at him then, at the man I'd raised, now standing with the weight of his choices pressing into his shoulders. "I'm trying to protect myself," I said. "There's a difference." He didn't argue. He just looked around the shop, half renovated, half dream, and then back at me. "You really think she meant to hurt you? I think she didn't care if she did." He sat on an overturned crate. "I don't know where I'm supposed to land in all this." "I'm not asking you to land," I said gently. "Just to stand still long enough to see clearly." We sat in silence for a few minutes, the kind that didn't demand to be filled. When he stood to go, he hugged me briefly, uncertain, and left without another word. I locked the door behind him, not out of fear but finality. That night, I slept with the windows open, the wind threading through the curtains. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't dream of being anywhere else. I named the shop Root and Bloom because it felt honest. We all come from something, and if we're lucky or stubborn, we grow. It wasn't much more than a converted garage with uneven floors and a door that stuck in the morning humidity. But the paint was fresh. The shelves were full, and the bell above the entrance chimed like a small celebration every time someone walked in. I sold hand-tied bouquets and herbal tea in mismatched mugs. People stayed longer than they needed to. Some bought nothing at all. They came to sit in the sunlit corner, sip chamomile, and talk about things they couldn't say out loud in their own homes. Widows, grandfathers, teenagers, tired nurses. I listened. I didn't offer advice unless asked. Just space. It was early spring when Lenora, the woman from the framing shop next door, came in, breathless, holding her phone like it was on fire. "You know her, don't you?" she asked. "Cassie Lennox." I nodded once. "She's all over the neighborhood app," she whispered. "Got arrested for credit card fraud. Someone tipped off her employer-client accounts were compromised. It's bad." I thanked her. She hovered for a moment, waiting for a reaction, but I only smiled and poured her a cup of lemon balm. After she left, I flipped the sign to closed. I wiped down the counter, slowly refolded a dish rag, and sat behind the register with my hands wrapped around a mug that had gone cold. I didn't feel vindicated. Just done. The world hadn't punished her. She'd set the fire herself. And now, maybe Marius would see the smoke for what it was. Not an accident. Not a bad day, but a pattern. As the light shifted across the tiled floor and the petals on the display tulips began to curl inward for the evening, I felt something settle in me. Not triumph, not bitterness. Just a quiet kind of peace. I lit a candle in the front window and watched the flame flicker small and steady. The same way I'd rebuilt one root at a time. 1 year later, the garden behind Root and Bloom is unrecognizable from the day I first tilled the stubborn soil with hands still stiff from winter. Now trellises curve with sweet pea vines and rosemary bushes fill the corners like soft green punctuation marks. Lavender lines the walkway, blooming, full fragrant, and wild. I host workshops on weekends. Little ones make seed bombs with their sticky fingers, and older women brew tinctures with dried petals and memory. Some just come to sit, sip tea, and breathe. No one asks too many questions. That's the rule. Isari helps after school. She wears an apron 2 sizes too big and talks to the plants like they're classmates. Tice builds fairy houses under the rose bushes and insists he hears them moving when no one's watching. I don't correct him. Marius comes on Thursdays. He never stays long. Sometimes he brings a new book for the kids. Sometimes just his silence. He never mentions Cassie. I never ask. One afternoon, as the sun warmed the patio and the kids chased bees with wooden wands, he stood beside me and said, "You were right. I didn't say I told you so. I just placed a hand over his and squeezed once. Forgiveness in my language is quiet, but I haven't forgotten. The drawer in my bedroom still stays locked, not because I fear another theft, but because I know now what it means to protect what's mine, even if I have to do it alone. The real healing didn't begin the night the mousetrap snapped shut. It started with the first customer who called me Miss Noreen and asked if I could wrap her bouquet in yellow instead of white. It grew when ESRI whispered, "I like it better here." And when Tice buried a broken teacup in the dirt, like it might bloom into something new. There's no trace of Cassie in this garden, not even in the dirt. I watch the sun dip behind the old maple at the edge of the fence, its branches stretching long across the gravel path. And I think this is what surviving looks like. Not escape, not revenge, just joy still standing.